Okay, I anticipate this being the last lecture on the topic of consciousness. There's several slides, but really just a couple broad topics that I want to cover. One is like, what's the definition of addiction? What are some of the theories behind addiction? And some risk factors, so to speak. So for our purposes, we're talking about addiction as when one is needing, oh, well, there's your definition of a craving of substances with physical or causes. So we've talked a little bit about the difference between psychological dependency and physiological dependency. Physiological dependency is when your body literally changes. Psychological dependency is when you are you need it in order to think. It's more like an activity of the mind, right? That I prefer to be in that state of consciousness would be, and I can't function or I don't like the world when I'm in this state of consciousness. What traditionally we think of as addiction, though, is this physiological change, right? That it's a disease or it's a behavior that has altered the way that our body responds to things, and therefore we have these physiological, real physiological, medical, structural changes to our body, right? Not just, it's a matter of thinking differently about it. I take a fairly liberal definition of addiction. In other words, I believe that you can become addicted. Anything that changes the way your body operates can be potentially addictive. For instance, food addiction, the craving for sugar, the craving for to eat, exercise, sex, all of those things change the way our body feels. And those can be very pleasant experiences, and therefore we can be physiologically dependent and need those sensations. That's a personal theory of mine. Not all psychologists would agree with that very broad definition of what I mean by addiction. But the one theory, this one is the incentive sensation theory of addiction, says it kind of works like this. And this one kind of is as much about that you don't just get addicted to the substance, to the actual thing, but it's the whole thing. It's the process of getting that thing that is part of the experience. So it works like this. You tried it, you did something, and it felt good, right? And so you do it again. Obviously, you've got dopamine. So you do it again, and that you then, the rituals that are associated with getting this thing, with getting your beer, with rolling your joint, with going to the gym, the smells, the ritual, the camaraderie, all of those other things that are associated with this substance, that's what we have in step 2. And this is called associative learning. So that, for instance, I don't know. So for instance, maybe the first time you've had a glass of wine, I'll just use myself because my Achilles tendon, as they say, is red wine, right? And so the first time I do it, according to this theory, I like the way it tastes, and so I do it again. And I do this enough times for the taste in the beginning, for the pleasure of the experience. But then after a while, I can hear the little cling cling of my wine glasses. I can feel, I anticipate the smell when the cork pops. I anticipate the glug 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 as I pour it out. Oh my gosh, I shouldn't be saying these things, right? And all of those cues, and that's what it is right there, all of these environmental cues, they prepare us for the sensation. And over time, then you move into stage 3, and it's not the pleasure of the substance. You may actually get to a point where you don't really like the taste anymore, or you don't like the way it makes you feel the next day. But now it's the whole ritual that you have to break free of. And so your liking decreases, and now it's like, in order just to feel right. I read a really good novel once, and the main character was an alcoholic, and she talked about how she had to drink half a bottle in order just to be right. Like, she had spent so much of your time in this altered state that was your normal altered state, and your sober state, that was that was a weird, that was a not a common state. So you have to engage in these activities and these substances in order just to quote unquote get right. Another good one would be like a cigarette smoker, right? My husband's been smoking for 45 years. He's wanted to stop smoking. He says he doesn't like the way it tastes, so he's moved on to 3, but his whole ritual, the way his car smells, the way his garage smells, the routine of his day, he gets up in the morning, he goes outside, the little ritual that goes with tamping down your cigarettes, all of those things create this, well, it was incentive salience, right? It becomes more than just the inhalation of the nicotine that we become addicted to. So one of the things I tell you in AA is that if you really want to break free, you have to quit associating with people, because your friends, chances are your friends know you as a drinker, or maybe you have memories of hanging out with your friends. One of the things that I do when I drink a lot is I clean. I have a very clean house because I used to drink a lot, and my my counselor explained to me that I probably would need to like get used to having a dirty house for a while, because if cleaning, we talk about, they're called triggers. If cleaning was the trigger to drink, then you have to avoid the trigger. So quit going to those places, quit hanging out with those friends, quit eating a certain food if those are the things that trigger your need for some sort of substance. That's a very simplified version of addiction, but I do believe that addiction changes the way your body, I'll just try to find that. There's a nifty video link that shows the different regions of the brain that are activated. And I had always felt that cigarette smokers were just like my husband. I thought he was just weak-willed. And then I started teaching this stuff, and I saw all the regions of the brain that are activated with nicotine, and I don't feel that way anymore. If people can give that up, more power to them. That is the monkey on your back. Okay, a couple important things here. I believe these show up in a quiz as well. What are some of the factors that make a drug? So not all substances are as addictive. Not all substances are people as likely to get addicted to. Some of these I've already talked about. So the nature of the drug, less intense, shorter duration. LSD is very intense drug. It acts for a long time, 8, 10, 12 hours. It is considered not addictive. Caffeine and nicotine, a fairly mild intensity, short half-life, highly addictive. The biological distribution, predisposition of the user. There's an awful lot of evidence that says that addictions run in families. Like there's some brain structures that are more, or some brain systems that are more prone to develop this addictive behavior. Psychological factors, in other words, what do you believe, right? Depressed people, religious people are less likely to become addictive because their belief system about the world and about themselves. They might become addicted to prayer or to church, right? As we were talking about earlier, meditation changes the way your heart rate. You can become so that you crave that sensation. Now, in the long run, I think that probably being addicted to prayer has fewer long-term negative side effects than being addicted to, say, well, probably anything else, right? But we can't deny that meditation, yoga, prayer, exercise, all of those quote unquote good things, they do change the way our body feels, and the way that, and our heart rate and all those other things. And then the last one, of course, is what's the cultural environment? What drugs are available? What's the social norms, right? What do other people do? Is it easy to get? Like I was saying about Manhattan High, that in that particular subculture and that social environment, it's easier, they say it's easier to get LSD than it is to get marijuana. If you can't, if you've inherited the biological predisposition to become an addict to alcohol, but you're never exposed to alcohol, you're not going to become an alcoholic, right? If you grow up in a highly religious environment, but you've inherited the brain structures to develop an addiction, but it's banned in your community, you're probably not going to develop an addiction to that. Maybe you'll develop an addiction to something else. I don't know. I pulled this from a document several years ago. Basically, what it says is it kind of challenges the notion that who is more likely to use drugs. You know, the myth is that it's poor people, and in fact, the three variables that predict typical college drug use are a little bit of stress, a little bit of boredom, and a little bit of extra money. So you're stressed out with your homework, you've got a little bit of money in the bank, or you just have a little bit of cash in your pocket and a little bit of free time. And those people that are working their butt off at 3 jobs, never have an evening off, they're less likely to be using drugs. And then there's some questions down here that I've already sort of mentioned. How do you drink too much? I don't know. I've got some mixed feelings about some of these. For instance, do you drink alone? Well, for some of us, it's better if we drink alone because we don't say mean things to people. Do you have long hangovers? What does it say? Do you drink? I think the big one, if I was to say that's a risk factor, is do you drink when you tell yourself you're not going to? To me, that is sort of a aha. Yeah, it looks like my outline here is a little bit different than this one up here. And this is just another thing I pulled from a resource a long time ago, the difference between a heavy drinker and a context drinker. So sometimes people say that we're a social drinker, I only drink when other people do. And then a heavy drinker is defined as somebody who, what does it say, drinks to the point of being drunk. Problem drinkers, to me, this is the worst one right here. I mean, if you can drink a lot and still carry a job and not get in trouble, but the problem drinkers, those are the ones that say the mean, that's me. Those are the ones that say the mean things and do the mean things that get in trouble, that do things and then regret it because they've hurt people's feelings or they've, yeah. Okay, I think that sort of wraps this one up. So I'm not sure what the next chapter will be. I will see you when we get there though.